They stood in my living room laughing as they divided up my savings, their voices light and careless, my son-in-law smirking as he said, "She can't afford a lawyer," and then, without hesitation, just drain it all, never imagining that what they didn't know was that I'd already made one phone call, and by sunrise their accounts were frozen solid. And when my phone started ringing off the hook afterward, I let every single call go straight to voicemail, because my name is Diane and I'm 72 years old. And before I tell you what happened, I want to know where you're watching this from. So drop your city and state in the comments, because I love knowing where my stories reach. And now settle in, because what I'm about to share will show you that age doesn't mean weakness, and silence doesn't mean surrender. I spent 43 years as a registered nurse at St. Michael's Hospital in Philadelphia, and my husband Paul and I raised 3 children in a modest 2-story house in the suburbs, the kind with a front porch where we'd sit on summer evenings watching the neighborhood kids play, and Paul was a contractor, and together we built a comfortable life, not wealthy but secure, saving carefully and investing modestly in CDs and bonds, nothing fancy, the kind of people who brought casseroles to sick neighbors and never missed a single school play or baseball game. Until Paul passed away 6 years ago from a sudden heart attack, and it felt like the ground had opened beneath me, because one morning he was laughing over coffee, complaining about a difficult client, and by afternoon he was gone, and 46 years of marriage ended in a hospital corridor while a young doctor stammered through condolences. And I remember thinking how strange it was that I'd worked in that hospital for decades and had delivered that same speech to countless families, and now I was the one on the receiving end, and the grief was crushing. But I'm not the type to crumble completely, because my mother raised me to believe that falling apart was a luxury we couldn't afford. So I grieved privately, adjusted to the echo of an empty house, and kept living with Paul's life insurance, our retirement savings, and the house paid off years ago, financially stable and emotionally managing. And my daughter Jennifer, my middle child who always seemed to need extra attention, had struggled through 2 difficult divorces before meeting Craig, and I'd been genuinely happy when she remarried 8 years ago, because Craig seemed successful, worked in finance, drove a nice car, wore expensive suits, and at family dinners talked confidently about market trends and investment portfolios in a way that made him sound knowledgeable, even though I never quite understood what his actual job was. And whenever I asked specifics, he'd wave his hand dismissively and say things like, "I manage diversified asset portfolios for high net worth individuals," which sounded impressive. So I assumed it meant he was good at his job. And after Paul died, Jennifer started calling more frequently. And at first I welcomed it, because a widow needs family and needs to feel connected. And she'd stop by on weekends, bring takeout, help me organize Paul's belongings, and it felt like we were growing closer, though I should have paid more attention to the questions she was asking about how much Dad left me, where I kept important documents, and whether I'd thought about updating my will. And about 2 years ago, over coffee at my kitchen table, Jennifer brought it up more directly, telling me I really needed to get my affairs in order, because I wasn't getting any younger, and if something happened to me, they'd have no idea how to handle my finances. And the logic seemed sound, since I was 70 and recently widowed, and yes, something could happen. So when she suggested meeting with an attorney Craig knew, I agreed. And the attorney's name was Richard Holloway, and his office was in a strip mall near the highway, which should have been my first red flag, because successful attorneys don't usually practice between a nail salon and a tax preparation service. And Richard was smooth, probably in his late 50s, with white teeth and a golf tan, greeting Craig like an old friend with backslaps and inside jokes. And the meeting happened fast, too fast, with stack after stack of documents placed in front of me: power of attorney forms, healthcare directives, updated beneficiary designations, each explained in rapid-fire legal language that made my head spin. As he said, "Mrs. Patterson, this durable power of attorney simply allows Jennifer and Craig to help manage your finances if you become incapacitated. Standard estate planning. You'd want someone you trust handling things if, God forbid, you had a stroke or developed dementia." And when I tried to slow down and read more carefully, he patted my hand condescendingly and said he knew legal language could be confusing, and that's why I had family there to help, that it was all for my protection. While Craig nodded vigorously and told me they just wanted to make sure I was taken care of, that was all it was, and I signed everything. And looking back now, I can see how expertly they manipulated the situation, how they made me feel like asking questions meant I didn't trust my own daughter, how they made me feel stupid for not understanding legal jargon, how they made me feel like protecting myself was somehow an insult to family loyalty. And for the next year, life continued normally as I volunteered at St. Luke's Church, organizing the food pantry every Tuesday, met my friend Martha for lunch at the diner every Thursday, tended my garden where Paul's roses were finally thriving after years of struggling, and Jennifer and Craig visited regularly, always asking about my health and whether I needed help with anything, their concerns seeming genuine and leaving me grateful to have a daughter who cared. Until about 6 months ago, when something made me check my bank statement more carefully than usual, though I still can't remember what triggered it. Maybe it was just a nurse's instinct telling me that something was off. But that was when I saw the small withdrawals I hadn't made. $100 here, $800 there, $1,200 the month before. Nothing dramatic enough to immediately alarm me, yet consistent enough to form a pattern that wouldn't let go of my mind. So I called the bank the next morning with my hands shaking as I pressed the numbers. And when the customer service representative pulled up my account, she said calmly, "Yes, Mrs. Patterson, I see those transactions. They were authorized through a power of attorney. Your son-in-law, Craig Brennan, initiated them." And my throat went dry as I said I hadn't authorized any withdrawals, only to hear her explain that according to their records, Mr. Brennan had durable power of attorney over my accounts, and that those documents had been filed 14 months ago. 14 months, right after that meeting with Richard Holloway. And that same afternoon, I confronted Jennifer when she came by, saying she was just stopping in to check on me, arriving with bakery cookies and a bright smile that now looked predatory as I said, "Sweetheart, I need to talk to you about something. I'm seeing withdrawals from my accounts that I didn't make. Do you know anything about this?" And she barely glanced up from her phone, scrolling with obvious disinterest as she said, "Oh, Mom, don't worry about that. Craig's been helping manage your investments, moving money around to get you better returns, optimizing your portfolio. You signed the papers, remember? You gave us permission." And the casual dismissal in her voice felt like a slap, because this wasn't my attentive, concerned daughter but someone irritated by having to explain herself. And when I told her I'd only given permission to help if I became incapacitated and that I was perfectly capable of managing my own money, Craig walked in from the kitchen, carrying a glass of my iced tea like he owned the place, his expression harder than I'd ever seen, as he said, "Diane, let's be real here. You're 72 years old, no offense, but you're not exactly sharp enough anymore to handle complex financial matters. Jennifer and I are protecting you from yourself, from making poor decisions. You should be grateful we're taking this burden off your shoulders." And that word grateful landed like a stone in my stomach, because they wanted gratitude for stealing from me. But I didn't argue, because over 7 decades of life, I've learned that sometimes the smartest response is no response. So I let them underestimate me, let them think their manipulation worked, nodded vaguely, put on a confused expression, murmured something about forgetting things lately, watched relief flash across Craig's face, and saw Jennifer relax back into her phone, convinced they'd won, and that I was just another confused old woman who would accept whatever they told me. And the moment their car pulled out of my driveway, I grabbed my purse and keys and drove straight to my bank with my hands trembling so badly I could barely grip the steering wheel, where the branch manager, Patricia Chen, a kind woman who'd helped me refinance my mortgage years ago, saw my face and immediately ushered me into her office as I said I needed to see all my accounts, everything, every transaction, for the past 2 years. And as her fingers flew across the keyboard, her face went pale and she whispered, "Oh my God," turning the monitor toward me to show a spreadsheet filled with withdrawal after withdrawal after withdrawal that had started small, $500 here, but grown bolder, with recent withdrawals of $2,350 and $4,000, all authorized by Craig's power of attorney, and transferred into accounts in his name. And when I whispered how much total, she gently told me that over the past 14 months, there had been withdrawals totaling $87,430, nearly $90,000, most of what Paul and I had saved over 4 decades, my security, my independence, my future. And when I told her I'd never approved this and that it was theft, she explained painfully that under banking law the withdrawals were technically legal because of the power of attorney, and that contesting it would require proving misuse of authority and hiring a lawyer, an expensive lawyer. And after apologizing, she admitted there was nothing more she could do. So I thanked her and sat in my car in the parking lot for 20 minutes trying to process that my own daughter, the child I'd carried for 9 months, nursed through colic, taught to ride a bike, supported through divorces and every hardship, had been stealing from me deliberately. And that evening when Jennifer called with a cheerful voice asking how my day was and then suggested selling my house, moving me into assisted living, using the equity to fund my care, I felt sick thinking of the home Paul built with his own hands, where we raised our children and filled 40 years of memories. And when I said firmly that I wasn't interested in selling, there was a long, dangerous pause. Then I heard Craig in the background, his voice muffled but clear enough to cut straight through me, saying, "Just keep pushing. She cave eventually. They all do. They all do." And I wondered how many elderly people they had done this to, whether I was just another mark. And that night I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep, while Paul's picture sat on my nightstand, his smile forever frozen at age 66 before the heart attack stole him from me. And I asked myself what Paul would do in this situation, knowing without hesitation that he'd fight, because Paul never backed down from injustice and never let anyone push him around, standing up to corrupt building inspectors, dishonest suppliers, and clients who tried to cheat him, always fighting for what was right. And I knew I had to do the same. So the next morning I called Martha, my friend of 30 years and a fellow nurse, the one person I trusted absolutely, and I told her everything: the power of attorney, the withdrawals, Jennifer's betrayal, my voice breaking several times as I spoke but pushing through anyway. And after a long silence, Martha said, "Diane, my nephew Thomas is a partner at Keller Morrison and Associates. They're one of the best firms in Pennsylvania. I'm calling him right now." And when I protested that I couldn't afford it, she told me I couldn't afford not to, and to trust her and let her make the call. And 2 days later I was sitting in a gleaming conference room, 40 stories above downtown Philadelphia, with floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking the city and furniture that probably cost more than my car, facing Thomas Keller, a man about 45 with sharp eyes and the calm, controlled presence of someone who knows he's very good at what he does, dressed in an immaculate charcoal suit as he listened to my entire story without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. And when I finished, he set down his pen, looked at me directly, and said, "Mrs. Patterson, what's been done to you is called financial exploitation of an elderly person. And in Pennsylvania it's not just a civil matter, it's a crime. You could press criminal charges if you wanted. And more than that, what your daughter and son-in-law did is morally reprehensible. But here's what you need to know up front. Stopping this and recovering your money will require aggressive legal action. Fast, decisive, and expensive. My retainer is $15,000. And that's just a start." And when he said 15,000, and I thought about the $87,000 already stolen and the maybe $40,000 I had left, he read my expression and held up his hand to stop me, telling me to let him finish, explaining that, given the clear evidence of exploitation and the strong likelihood of not only recovering my funds, but also obtaining significant damages, he was willing to work on a modified contingency arrangement where I'd pay half the retainer, now $7,500, and they would pursue full restitution of every penny they took, plus damages, plus all his legal fees. And when we win, because he promised me we would win, Craig and Jennifer would pay for everything. Every hour billed, every court filing, every cent they stole, plus penalties for elder abuse. And those 3 words, "when we win," changed everything. So when I asked what I needed to do, he told me to write him a check for $7,500, and then go home and not contact my daughter or Craig, not answer their calls or respond to texts, letting them think everything was fine while his team moved so fast they wouldn't know what hit them. And I wrote that check that afternoon with shaking hands, knowing it was a huge risk and half of what I had left. But something in Thomas's eyes told me he meant every word and that he was going to win. And over the next 3 days, Thomas and his team moved like a military operation, subpoenaing bank records, interviewing Patricia at my bank, obtaining my medical records to prove I had no cognitive impairments, and filing an emergency petition with the Philadelphia County Court of Common Pleas, requesting immediate revocation of Craig's power of attorney, a freeze on all accounts that had received funds from mine, and a temporary restraining order preventing further transfers, explaining to me that the key was proving that power of attorney was never meant to enrich them because it's a fiduciary duty, and they were supposed to act solely in my best interests, that every withdrawal had to benefit me, and they were going to show that not a single cent had. And his investigators uncovered that Craig had used my money to lease a BMW, pay for a Hawaiian vacation, and fund extensive home renovations, all documented through credit card statements and bank records, and that Jennifer had also been quietly billing her personal expenses to accounts Craig controlled under my name, with the court hearing scheduled for the following Tuesday at 10 a.m., and Thomas advising me firmly not to tell them anything or warn them because they'd find out when the sheriff served them papers, which happened Monday night. Something I knew because my phone started ringing at 6:17 Tuesday morning with Jennifer, then Craig, then Jennifer again, then 3 more calls in rapid succession, every single one going to voicemail, none of which I listened to. And by 8 a.m. I'd received 15 calls and a dozen increasingly desperate text messages begging me to answer and accusing me of doing this to my own daughter, all of which I deleted without responding. And that morning I dressed in my best navy blue suit, the same one I'd worn to Paul's funeral 6 years ago, pearl earrings, low heels, hair neatly styled. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked strong, determined, unbreakable. Thomas met me in the courthouse lobby at 9:30. "Ready?" he asked. "I've never been more ready for anything in my life." We walked into the courtroom together. Jennifer and Craig were already there, seated next to Richard Holloway and another attorney I didn't recognize. The moment Jennifer saw me, her face drained of all color. Craig's jaw tightened, his hands clenching into fists on the table. The judge, Honorable Patricia Morrison, was a woman in her mid-60s with steel gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. She called the hearing to order and asked Thomas to present his petition. What followed was systematic destruction. Thomas laid out the evidence methodically, bank statements showing $87,000 in withdrawals, documentation proving I was fully competent, medical records, testimony from my doctor who stated I had no cognitive impairments whatsoever, character witnesses Martha had arranged, including 2 former colleagues who testified about my sharp mind and perfect recall. Then he showed where the money went. Screenshots of Craig's BMW lease agreement, monthly payment, $2,200 funded from my accounts, hotel and airfare receipts for a Hawaiian vacation, $12,000 charged to a credit card paid from my funds, contractor invoices for home renovations at Craig and Jennifer's house, $34,000 withdrawn directly from my savings. "Your Honor," Thomas said, his voice cutting through the courtroom, "not a single withdrawal benefited Mrs. Patterson. Not one. This was theft, disguised as financial management." Richard Holloway tried to defend his clients. He stammered through explanations about investment strategies and protective reallocation of assets. Thomas demolished every argument with documentation. "Mr. Holloway," Judge Morrison interrupted, her tone icy, "I've reviewed these transfers extensively. Money flowed directly from Mrs. Patterson's accounts to your client's personal accounts. It paid for luxury vehicles, vacations, home improvements. I don't see a single transaction that could remotely be construed as acting in Mrs. Patterson's best interests. Can you point to even one?" Richard had no answer. Judge Morrison turned her attention to Craig. "Mr. Brennan, you held a position of profound trust. Power of attorney is not a license to enrich yourself. Did you truly believe you were acting in Mrs. Patterson's best interests when you used her money to lease a luxury car?" Craig's face flushed red. "Your Honor, my mother-in-law is elderly. She doesn't understand modern financial." "I understand perfectly well," I said. The words came out before I could stop them, but they needed to be said. The courtroom went absolutely silent. Judge Morrison nodded at me. "Please continue, Mrs. Patterson." I stood up slowly, Thomas beside me. "Your Honor, I spent 43 years as a registered nurse. I managed complex patient care, calculated medication dosages, made life or death decisions every single day. I raised 3 children, managed a household budget, and worked full-time for 4 decades. My husband and I saved every penny of that money through careful planning and sacrifice. My mind is sharp. I am not confused. I am not senile. What my daughter and her husband did wasn't protection or help. It was theft, pure and simple theft. And they did it because they thought I was too old, too scared to stop them. You know what? If this story resonates with you, if you believe people deserve to stand up for themselves, no matter their age, please hit that subscribe button right now. I share these stories because we need to remind each other and the world that being older doesn't mean being powerless. We have voices, we have rights, and we will not be victims." Judge Morrison studied me for a long moment. Then she looked at her notes, looked at Craig and Jennifer, and made her ruling from the bench. "I'm granting the emergency petition in its entirety. Mr. Brennan's power of attorney is immediately and permanently revoked. All accounts remain frozen pending a complete forensic accounting of where Mrs. Patterson's funds went. Mr. Brennan and Mrs. Brennan are hereby ordered to appear for depositions within 14 days. Furthermore, I'm ordering both defendants to show cause why they should not be held in contempt and why I should not refer this matter to the district attorney for criminal prosecution under Pennsylvania's elder abuse statutes. Criminal prosecution, prison. Craig's face went white. Jennifer started crying. Judge Morrison wasn't finished. Mrs. Patterson, you also have the right to pursue civil damages for emotional distress, breach of fiduciary duty, and financial exploitation. I encourage you to do so. This court does not take kindly to people who prey on their own family members. As we left the courtroom, Jennifer tried to approach me, her face stir with tears. Mom, please, we can work this out. We can talk. Thomas stepped between us smoothly. Any and all communication goes through my office. Do not contact my client directly. If you do, I'll file for additional restraining orders. Outside the courthouse, autumn air, crisp and clean, I took the deepest breath I'd taken in months. I could finally breathe again. Over the next month, Thomas's team did what they do best. The depositions revealed everything. Craig had gambling debts he'd hidden from Jennifer. The Hawaiian trip, the BMW, the renovations, all funded by my money. Jennifer had known but convinced herself it was justified because you were going to leave everything to me eventually anyway. That logic, that stunning, entitled sociopathic logic, broke something in me that couldn't be repaired. But Thomas wasn't interested in my broken heart. He was interested in complete and total victory. He negotiated with Craig and Jennifer's attorneys, making absolutely clear that if they didn't settle immediately and in full, he would pursue criminal charges. Elder abuse in Pennsylvania carried up to 7 years in prison. Faced with prison time, they crumbled. Within 6 weeks, every single penny was returned to my accounts, plus $53,000 in damages, interest, and penalties. Thomas had insisted on the substantial damages. They need to feel this, he'd told me during negotiations. They need to understand there are consequences. Otherwise, they'll just do it to someone else. The settlement funds hit my account on a Thursday morning in late October. I was drinking coffee at my kitchen table when Patricia from the bank called to confirm the wire transfer. Mrs. Patterson, I wanted to personally let you know $140,000 just cleared into your account. Everything they took, everything they spent, plus damages, it's all there. $140,000. My money, my security, my future, all of it back. I called Thomas immediately. How did you make them pay so much? He laughed, genuinely pleased. I told them the alternative was Craig going to prison and Jennifer losing her nursing license. Yes, we discovered she's been skimming from her employer, too, billing personal expenses to hospital accounts. The Pennsylvania Board of Nursing doesn't look kindly on that. Faced with both of them potentially going to prison and losing their careers, they found money they swore didn't exist. Craig's parents took out a second mortgage. They liquidated retirement accounts. They'll be paying this off for 10 years at least. Good, I thought savagely. Let them understand what it feels like to have your financial security ripped away. The final piece of the puzzle was securing my house and remaining assets. Thomas had the original power of attorney documents reviewed by an independent legal ethics expert. That expert testified that Richard Holloway had violated multiple professional responsibility rules by drafting documents designed to benefit Craig rather than protect me. Richard Holloway lost his law license 3 months later. As for my estate planning, Thomas's firm drafted completely new documents, ironclad, unbreakable documents that left specific bequests to my son Michael, my daughter Susan, and several charities I care about. Jennifer's name appears nowhere in my will now, not as a beneficiary, not as an executive, nowhere. She made her choice. I made mine. I haven't spoken to Jennifer since that court hearing 7 months ago. She's tried everything, calling, texting, showing up at my house unannounced, even having Craig's mother call to plead their case. Thomas sent a formal cease and desist letter. Some relationships can't be repaired. Some betrayals cut too deep to heal. My other children, Michael and Susan, were absolutely horrified when they learned what had happened. Michael flew in from Colorado immediately. Susan drove up from Virginia. Both of them have been checking in regularly, helping me feel less alone. But I've also made it clear that I don't need managing or monitoring. I'm fine, on my own. I don't need protection. What I needed was justice. And I took it. 3 months after everything was settled, Martha and I were having lunch at our favorite bistro, a little Italian place downtown where they know our orders by heart. She raised her glass of iced tea toward me, her eyes bright with pride. To Diane Patterson, she said. The woman who proved that 72 just means you've had 7 decades to learn how to fight. I clinketed my glass against hers to refusing to be a victim, and to being gloriously, magnificently vindictive when necessary, Martha added with a grin. I laughed, really laughed, for the first time in months. As I drove home that afternoon, past trees blazing with autumn gold and crimson, I thought about Paul. I could almost feel him in the passenger seat, that solid presence I'd loved for 46 years. I could almost hear his voice. That's my Diane. Knew you had it in you. Just took the right push to bring it out. He would have been proud. Hell, I was proud of myself. My life now looks much like it did before all this happened. Quiet, simple, filled with church activities and garden work and lunches with friends. I still volunteer at the food pantry every Tuesday. I still tend Paul's roses, which are thriving. I still have coffee on my front porch in the mornings, watching the neighborhood come alive. But I carry myself differently now. There's steel in my spine that wasn't there before, forged in the fire of betrayal and hardened by the fight for justice. When people look at me, they don't just see a sweet, elderly woman. They see someone who fought back and won. They see someone you don't want to cross. The money is safely in my accounts now, managed by a fiduciary financial advisor Thomas recommended, someone with actual credentials, legal obligations, and oversight. My house is mine, secured by legal documents that can't be twisted or manipulated. And most importantly, I have my dignity back, my self-respect, my power. Craig and Jennifer are still together, as far as I know. I heard through Michael that they're struggling badly financially. Craig's parents barely speak to them. The weight of what they did, the criminal investigation that was narrowly avoided, the professional consequences, the family rupture they caused, has started to sink in. Their marriage is reportedly strained. Craig apparently blames Jennifer for not controlling me. Jennifer blames Craig for the gambling debts that started this whole mess. I don't take pleasure in their suffering, but I don't regret causing it either. Actions have consequences. That's not cruelty or revenge. That's justice. That's the natural order of things being restored. Sometimes late at night when the house is quiet, I wonder if Jennifer ever truly thinks about what she gave up, not the money or the inheritance. Those are just things. I mean the relationship. She had a mother who loved her unconditionally, who would have helped her financially if she'd just been honest about Craig's gambling problems, who would have supported her through any difficulty. Instead, she chose deception. She chose theft. She chose to see me as a resource to be exploited rather than a person to be valued. That was her choice, made deliberately and repeatedly over 14 months. And my choice was to stop her, to fight back, to refuse to be anyone's victim. The phone still sits on my kitchen counter. 7 months of silence from Jennifer, occasionally late at night. I wonder if I should feel guilty about that silence. Mother-daughter relationships are supposed to be forever, right? But then, I remember sitting in that bank with Patricia, looking at $87,000 in unauthorized withdrawals. I remember Craig's smug face telling me I should be grateful they were stealing from me. I remembered Jennifer's cold dismissal when I confronted her. No, I don't feel guilty. I feel free. If you're watching this, and something similar has happened to you, whether from family members, friends, caretakers, or anyone else who thought your age made you an easy target, please hear me clearly. You are not powerless. You are not too old to fight back. You are not obligated to accept mistreatment simply because it comes from people you love, or people who claim to care about you. Get help. Find a lawyer, a real one, not some strip mall attorney, connected to the people exploiting you. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is wrong. And never, ever let anyone convince you that protecting yourself is somehow selfish or mean, or a betrayal of family loyalty. Taking care of yourself isn't selfish, it's survival. I'm 72 years old. I've buried a husband I loved more than life itself. I've raised 3 children, 2 who turned out wonderful, and 1 who broke my heart. I've worked for decades in a demanding profession. I've survived a betrayal that could have destroyed me financially, emotionally, and spiritually. But here I am, still standing, still strong, still fighting, still absolutely refusing to be anyone's victim. That more than the recovered money, more than the legal victory, more than anything else, is what matters. I didn't just get my money back. I got myself back. The version of me that I'd forgotten existed. The fighter, the survivor, the woman who refuses to go quietly into anyone's version of what an elderly woman should be. And that is the real victory.